made one mistake, Marcus!
No, you made it for me.
By tonight, you disappear into solitary.
By morning, your son loses Duke. You shoulda left my son out of it.
You're an inmate. Nobody believes inmates.
They don't have to believe me. They only have to hear you.
What did you put in them?
Dad, did you actually do it?
You set me up. I'll make you pay. I can still bury you.
You had 7 years. I only needed 61 hours.
The people you forgot could listen.
Cole's hand was still on the phone when Marcus spoke. You should have searched the shoes. Marcus said. Cole looked up. Outside the office door. Footsteps stopped in the corridor. You're 12 minutes too late. Marcus said. Cole's hand lifted from the phone without dialing. The door opened. 8 months earlier. Marcus Coleman walked into Millhaven Correctional, carrying a duffel bag and a pair of Nike high tops that a corrections officer named Terrence Gibbs inspected. Logged as personal property. And did not disassemble. He should have disassembled them. Millhaven sat on what used to be a sugarcane plantation outside Gravier, Louisiana. Ninahontlamin. Most of them black. Most from parishes where public defenders carried 40 cases at a time, and juries made decisions in under 4 hours. 2 hours from the nearest federal courthouse. Exactly how Warden Darius Cole preferred it. Cole was 51. Silver-templed. With a handshake that ran for governor. 3 consecutive citations for rehabilitation programming. His flagship initiative, the Redemption League, had been featured in a corrections industry magazine under the headline, Basketball as a Pathway to Reentry. The framed article sat behind his desk next to a photo of him and the lieutenant governor. The Redemption League ran every Saturday. 8 teams. A resurfaced court. A private live stream. Family members could access it to follow their loved one's progress. True. In the narrow way most lies are true. So could the 212 bettors across Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas who paid $300 monthly for access to Cole's private network, where point spreads were posted Thursday noon and payouts ran through a shell company in Baton Rouge. The men on the court knew the arrangement because Cole made sure they knew not through speeches. Through what happened to men who refused. A player named Deshaun Priestley had refused in March. Within 48 hours, a shiv appeared under his mattress. He went to solitary. He never refused again. Marcus had read about Priestley in a federal file 18 months before his conviction, before Millhaven. He had spent 12 seasons in the NBA and 8 years inside the FBI's Sports Corruption Unit informant first. Then credentialed agent, running operations against point-shaving rings across 3 college conferences. He understood the game. Underneath the game, he had put 37 men in federal prison. He was good at staying inside things he needed to be inside. And he had learned to keep that part of himself completely invisible. When the file on Cole arrived during a routine grant scan, Marcus pulled the thread. His supervisor told him to let it go. Political relationships. Lieutenant governor up for re-election. Marcus let it go. On paper, 16 months later, a federal grand jury indicted him on wire fraud charges, built from evidence that explained itself too perfectly. He told his attorney to stop appealing. He had spent those months building a different kind of case, one that required him to be somewhere no free man with a badge could go. He told his son Devon he would be home in less than a year. Devon was 17. Full scholarship to Duke. A future that nothing about Millhaven was allowed to touch. He had earned the scholarship the way Marcus had built his cases quietly, without announcing what he was doing until it was done. 3 years of 5 a.m. workouts. A GPA Nobody in his school had managed alongside a varsity starting spot. Marcus would miss the whole senior season. Less than a year, Devon said. His voice was flat, the way teenage voices go flat when they are holding something they won't name. Trust me, Marcus said. Devon looked at him. I always do. That's the problem. The left insole of the Nike high tops contained a recording device the size of a nickel 72-hour capacity. Wireless charge through a cable that looked like a standard phone charger. Gibbs logged the shoes and moved on. By his third week, Marcus had mapped the hierarchy from the court outward, which players were reliable earners, which officers collected after games, which men received commissary bonuses for keeping spreads clean. He had also found Jerome Washington. Rome was 38, 6'2", with hands that still moved, like a shooting guard's after 5 years of concrete. He sat alone at the far end of the yard each evening, watching the basketball court, the way a man watches something he used to love and has stopped pretending he doesn't miss. Marcus sat down next to him, without asking. They talked 3 minutes before a corrections officer walked too slowly past their bench. Rome went silent, mid-sentence, eyes forward, until the footsteps were gone. Morrison, Marcus said, 2 years on Cole's payroll. Evenings. Rome kept his voice low. You're being watched. I know. Then, why are you here? Because you've been carrying something alone for 4 years? Marcus said, I need to know if it broke you. Rome looked at the court. A point guard, he knew, drove the lane and pulled up a miss, too clean to be accidental. The spread would have been set at 6. The miss kept it at 4. Courty sweb. Rome said. He refused 2 years before Priestley. Cole had him transferred 3 hours away the week before his custody hearing. His wife couldn't get anyone there in time. He lost his daughter. Rome's jaw tightened. She's 6 years old. Named Alicia. Every Sunday, she asks her grandmother why her daddy doesn't come to church. Never met him. Because he wouldn't shave a spread. Marcus said nothing. There were others before Curtis. Rome said, men who didn't have names that made the file, men who just got transferred or lost good time, or ended up with new infractions that nobody outside could trace back to Cole. You think you're looking at one corrupt warden. You're looking at 7 years of a system that learned how to use itself. He paused. I've watched it long enough that I stopped being surprised by it. That's the worst part. When you stop being surprised. Marcus looked at him. Are you still angry? Rome thought about it. I'm tired of being the only one who knows. You're not. Marcus said. Not anymore. Rome studied him the way men study things they want to believe, but have learned to distrust. Then he exhaled slowly, like something releasing that had been held too long. What do you need? He said. The Redemption League offered Marcus a spot on Team 4. He played 2 Saturdays at 70% useful. Not remarkable. Cole came to the 3rd game and watched from the baseline, arms folded. Assessing. Afterward, a corrections officer said the warden wanted to meet Cole's office. The framed article, the lieutenant governor photo, a handshake that lasted 1 second too long. I know what you were before you came in here. Cole said, FB. Sport corruption. Men with that background understand how things actually work. He let it sit. I think we could have a productive conversation about certain arrangements. I'd need to understand the structure first. Marcus said. Cole stood. Get settled. Play your game. Marcus shook the hand. In the left insole, the device recorded the grip. Cole met with him twice more over the following 10 days. Each time, going further, the network structure, the payout mechanism, the Baton Rouge shell, thorough, confident, the confidence of a man who had survived 2 previous investigations and believed he understood exactly how clean his paper trail needed to look. Between those meetings, Marcus reached Keisha Drummond through the facility's legal mail, a channel that required a separate court order to monitor. 3 words on an envelope to her home address. Wait for contact. Inside, a coded message. She decoded in 20 minutes. It told her where to file IG office. Not the bureau. Cole had bureau contacts who had flagged Marcus's identity. The IG track was slower but clean. Separate personnel, separate clearances. No shared infrastructure. Drummond filed. The complaint came back delayed 60 to 90 days for administrative review, citing overlap, with a state corrections review that did not exist. She checked twice. Then she stopped using the system that was protecting Cole and drove 2 states over to file in person with a supervisor she trusted. The clock started. On the 3rd meeting, Cole said Saturday, Team 2, spread is 8. I need it to finish at 5. Think of it as an audition. Not just recruitment, a test. He wanted Marcus implicated before trusting him fully. I'll play, Marcus said. He played clean, while making it look like he was chasing Cole's number. Final spread landed at 6. 1 point off. Cole called him in. Cease, he said. I haven't played competitive ball in 6 months. I'll be tighter. Cole studied him. Marcus held the look and thought about Devon's call the previous Tuesday. 4 minutes on the tier phone. Devon talking about practice. About a professor who hadn't shown up. Nothing in particular. Then quiet. At the end, Dad, did you actually do it? The fraud. Not a question. The corridor light buzzed. Down the tier, someone argued about a remote control. Marcus looked at the cinder block wall. No, he said. Then why are you there? Because I need to be. Trust me one more time. A long silence. I always trust you. That's the problem. The line went flat. Next week, Cole said. That night, Morrison appeared outside Marcus's cell at lights out, stood, without speaking, for a full minute. Keys hanging loose. Nice shoes, Morrison said. Thanks. Thick soles. He tilted his head. The corridor light threw a shadow across the lower half of his face. Wouldn't want anything to happen to personal property in here. Things go missing. He walked away slowly. Marcus stared at the ceiling. Morrison hadn't touched the shoes, but he'd looked at them with intent, which meant Cole had flagged the intake. The device had 38 hours of battery left. If Morrison moved before the evidence went out, the entire operation collapsed. 3 days later, Cole called Marcus back to the office for a meeting that wasn't on the schedule. He set the shoes on the desk. Terrence found these in the laundry area. Cole said, apparently misplaced. He looked at them, then at Marcus. Anything in these I should know about? Marcus looked at the shoes. At Cole. At the space between them where the question was hanging in the air and the next 4 seconds would determine everything. Their shoes. Marcus said. Cole held the look. His hands were flat on the desk. He was close enough to pick them up and pull the insoles in 30 seconds. Marcus kept his breathing, even, and his face where he had trained it to stay for 12 seasons of fourth quarter moments. Pulse slowing. Vision widening. The machinery, doing what it had always done, when everything was on the line. Cole pushed the shoes across the desk. Keep track of your property, he said. Marcus picked them up. He did not let his hands change. Cole met with him a 4th time. He brought a folder. I want to move faster, he said, sliding it across the desk. I need someone with your background on the information side. Which games can be moved? Which players are reliable? How to weight the spreads. In exchange, your situation here changes. Better housing. Phone access. Early movement on your record. Marcus opened the folder. Names. Game schedules. Player assessments. The full operational architecture. Printed. Because Cole was so certain of Marcus's compliance that he had put it on paper, he had just handed over everything, Quote, Marcus read the first page slowly, as if considering it. I need a day, he said. Of course. Cole extended the hand. But not too long. That night, he found Rome at the far end of the tier. Leaning against the wall outside his cell, Marcus spoke without stopping. Tonight, everything. Namis. Dates. Kurtischweb. Priestley. Chell Gap. After midnight, Rome said nothing. He nodded. Once the nod of a man who has made a decision he can't take back and knows it, and is at peace with that. At 1240, the note came through names. Dates. Incidents written in near illegible handwriting that had been practiced into obscurity. The testimony of a man who had decided silence was its own kind of sentence. Marcus read it by the faint corridor light. Every incident cross-referenced what the recording had already captured. Together, it was more than enough. He spent 2 days creating noise, small arguments with a kitchen officer about meal portions, not aggressive, just persistent. The way a man acts when he has decided something is unfair and can't let it go. 3 minor complaints filed through official channels about his cell assignment. Each slightly more detailed than the last. Administrative friction. The kind that looked exactly like an inmate testing limits rather than building a case. Cole's people were watching for sophisticated maneuvering. Someone arguing about chicken portions was the least interesting thing they could observe. On the second day, buried inside 4 other pending administrative items, the block officer had to clear before end of shift. He filed the civil rights grievance emergency contact with the facility's legal liaison. It went through in 31 hours. Instead of 72, Patricia Osei drove in from Baton Rouge the next morning. She was a contract attorney who drove out twice a month and had no relationship with Cole beyond professional courtesy. She had no idea what she was about to be handed. He had 40 minutes. He gave her the cable with the device. Rome's note. Cole's folder, which Cole had handed over with the confidence of a man who had never once imagined his recruits might be recording him. The IG contact, Drummond's file number, the wireless receiver frequency. Osei looked at the folder. He gave you this himself. Third meeting. Marcus said. He thought he was bringing me into the structure. He handed you the whole structure. Yes. She looked up. How long have you been planning this? Long enough. Marcus said. She drove back to Baton Rouge. Keisha Drummond answered on the second ring. Cole found out Wednesday. His DOJ contact called in a panic. The IG had issued a subpoena for Millhaven's full financial records going back 5 years. Through channels that bypassed the administrator entirely. Nothing to stall. Nothing to redirect. Cole moved fast. Morrison, search Marcus's cell. Find anything. A second officer pull Rome for a disciplinary hearing. His attorney in Baton Rouge leaked something to the corrections press about a disgruntled inmate. Get the story framed before the subpoena went public. Thursday morning. 2 searches. Nothing. The cable was in Baton Rouge. Rome moved to a different housing unit. Thursday afternoon. Cole sent an anonymous tip to Duke's athletic department, suggesting Devon's scholarship had been part of a deal rather than earned. A junior administrator flagged it to the head coach. The coach, who had received a courtesy call from the IG's office 48 hours prior, filed it directly to the federal investigator. On record, Cole was accelerating. Desperate men make more moves. More moves mean more evidence. Thursday evening. Cole called Marcus to the office. The practiced warmth was entirely gone. The framed magazine article behind his desk looked, for the first time, like what it was. By tonight, you're in solitary, Cole said. By morning, your son loses his scholarship. 1 call. That's all it takes. He held up a finger. Think very carefully. Marcus looked at the finger. At the face behind it, silver temples. Politician's jaw. Eyes that had learned to look like honesty and had done it for so long they had forgotten they were performing. "You're 12 minutes too late," Marcus said. Cole stared at him. "The server." Marcus's voice stayed level. "Federal custody. 9:47 this morning." A muscle worked in Cole's jaw. "Your Baton Rouge Shell Company. Subpoenaed 40 minutes before this meeting." Cole's hand moved toward the phone on the desk. "Old instinct. Reach for the lever you have always had. Don't call." Marcus said, "Your DOJ contact already has his own attorney. That call adds obstruction to the list." Cole's hand stopped, stayed near the phone without touching it. The silence in the room was the kind that falls when a man is running a calculation and keeps arriving at the same answer and keeps running it again anyway. Devon's scholarship. Marcus said, "Protected as a cooperating witness's dependent before I walked in here. The anonymous tip you sent to Duke this afternoon was logged with the federal investigator 40 minutes after it arrived." He paused. "That's witness tampering. You added it yourself." Cole looked at him. Something behind the practiced face was shifting the mask, not dropping so much as becoming transparent. The machinery underneath suddenly visible. "The folder you handed me." Marcus said, 31 names. Schedules. Spreads. The full payout structure. I gave it to your legal liaison Monday, along with 61 hours of audio recorded in this office. He held Cole's eyes. "You handed me the folder yourself. You sat across this desk and handed me everything." The silence stretched. Something moved across Cole's face. Not anger, not fear, but something older and worse. The recognition of how completely he had seen only what he needed to see. A disgraced agent with nothing left to protect. He had looked at Marcus Coleman and read a reflection of his own logic. A man who would trade integrity for comfort. Who understood the arrangement because he understood the alternative. He had never once considered that the arrangement might be the trap. "You were supposed to need me." Cole said, "No." Marcus said, "I needed you to talk." The door opened. Marcus stepped to the side and let the investigators do what they had driven here to do. He watched Cole's hands go flat on the desk, the practiced handshake man. The reformed corrections profile. The man who had shaken a lieutenant governor's hand and a magazine's hand and Marcus Coleman's hand and had never once wondered who was really in the room with him. The framed article behind his chair. The photo on the wall. All of it becoming backdrop now for a different picture than Cole had ever intended it to frame. One of the investigators said Cole's name in a flat, professional voice and told him to stand. Cole stood. For a moment, he looked at Marcus with an expression that had lost all of its construction. No warmth. No calculation. No practiced assurance. Just a man who had believed his own story for so long that the moment it ended he didn't know what expression to wear. Marcus held his gaze and said nothing. There was nothing that needed to be said. He thought of Devon's voice on a prison phone. "I always trust you." That's the problem. He thought of Rome at the far end of a yard, watching a court he used to love. He thought of Alicia Webb, 6 years old, who had been asking her grandmother every Sunday why her daddy didn't come to church. 8 months was the trade. It was worth it. The investigation took 4 months. 7 years. Not 3. 104 men. 31 falsified disciplinary records. Curtis Webb's transfer traced to a risk assessment Cole had signed himself. Priestley's shiv from Morrison's own evidence locker. A state senator resigned before the indictment. The DOJ administrator flipped and named 4 more facilities. The investigation expanded into Mississippi and Texas before the year was out. Cole, racketeering. Conspiracy. Wire fraud. Federal grant fraud. Deprivation of rights under color of law. His attorney negotiated 41 months. The judge rejected it without hesitation. 19 years. Marcus heard the sentence from a holding room, not a courtroom. He did not smile. He only closed his eyes. His conviction was vacated 8 months and 12 days after he walked into Millhaven. evidence manufactured by parties now facing federal charges. As part of a pattern of retaliation against a federal investigator whose work threatened an ongoing criminal enterprise, wrongful imprisonment, immediate release, he walked out through the same gate that had taken him in, into a parking lot where Keisha Drummond leaned against a government sedan with 2 cups of coffee that had no business calling themselves coffee. She handed him one without a word. He held it and looked at the sky above the tree line, the same sky he had seen through a window the size of a hand for 8 months. Finally, without fences in front of it, "Devin," he said, watching film with his teammates. "Coach sent a message this morning. Said to tell you the kid has your court vision." Marcus drank the coffee. "Too much cream. No, real flavor." The best thing he had tasted in 8 months, and it was bad coffee from a parking lot machine, the 4 other facilities. He said, 3 months in, Morrison cooperated and named 2 more officers in other parishes. "We're going to be busy for a while." She paused and looked at him directly. "The unit would take you back. Records clean. Everything built against you is gone. No, without hesitation, without heat. I'm done being inside things I can't walk out of." She nodded once. She had known what he would say. She had probably known before he walked out the gate. She handed him the car keys instead. "Devin's at practice until 4. She said, "You've got time." Rome, Washington made parole. 11 days later, Marcus drove back to Gravier to get him, because Rome had sat at the far end of a yard for 4 years, carrying weight that wasn't his to carry alone. And the least Marcus could do was make sure he didn't walk out to an empty road. Rome came through the gate in a jacket too thin for December. He stood in the parking lot for a long moment and looked at the sky, not at anything specific. Just the sky. The open, unobstructed sky that had been on the other side of fences for 4 years. Then he got in the car. They drove north on I-49. Flat green Louisiana on both sides. The heater ran. Neither of them spoke for a long time. "The shoes." Rome said eventually, "What about them? You planned this before you were convicted." "Yes. You gave up 8 months. Devin's senior year. I gave up 8 months." Marcus said, "Curtis Webb gave up 3 years of his daughter's life. Priestley lost his parole. 62. Others had their good time stripped." He kept his eyes on the road. 8 months was the trade. The highway ran straight and flat. A billboard passed. A gas station 2 exits ahead. "Last time I played real basketball, I was 22. Rome said, "LSU. Before the injury, I thought I had all the time in the world." "You're 38. Marcus said, "That's not old. Think I can still play. I think you can coach." Marcus said, "Which is harder and matters more." Something in Rome's shoulders released a tension that had been there so long it had stopped looking like tension and had started just looking like him. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay." Rome started coaching youth basketball at a community center in the 9th Ward 8 months after his release. No certification. No salary. No equipment, beyond what Marcus helped him acquire through a non-profit grant. 31 kids. 9 to 15. Most from families that understood what it meant. When a man didn't come home, he taught them how to read a defense before it sets, how to find the open man, even when the open man isn't you, how to make the right pass feel different from the easy one. On the wall of the gym, one line, in black paint on white wall, "The strongest move on the court is the one that makes someone else better." Devin came home for Christmas with 3 teammates, a duffel of laundry, and the particular energy of young men who take up space without meaning to. The house was loud in a way Marcus had forgotten houses could be loud. He stood in the kitchen the first night, just listening to it. On the second night, after the teammates had settled and the house gone quiet, Devin sat across from his father at the kitchen table with a glass of water and didn't look away. "I want to know all of it." he said. So, Marcus told him. Not everything there were parts that were sealed, and parts he was still sorting through himself. But the shape of it the case. The choice. 8 months. What Rome had carried alone for 4 years. What Alicia Webb was named, and why she had never met her father. What Cole had built inside a facility that received public money to rehabilitate human beings while using them as instruments. Devon listened without interrupting. When Marcus finished, the kitchen was quiet in the particular way that follows truth when it has just been told and is still settling. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car passed on the street. You could have told me, Devon said. You were 17. I'm 17 now, and I'm asking. Marcus looked at his son. At the eyes that were holding him without flinching, the same eyes that had said, I always trust you, and meant it as both love and accusation at the same time. At the hands that had his hands' shape. I'm sorry for the parts I made harder than they had to be. Devon was quiet. He looked at the table between them for a long moment. Then, he put his hand down next to his father's, not touching. Just parallel. The way young men show things they are not ready to say out loud, but need the other person to see. Coach says, I have your court vision. He said, Coach is trying to get you to work harder. Is it true? Marcus looked at his son's hands. Yeah, he said. It's true. Marcus took Devon to an open gym in December. A high school across town let former players use the court Saturday mornings. Just the two of them. Early. Before the building filled with noise, they ran for 2 hours without a plan passing. Running sets. The rhythm of two people who share a language and don't need to explain it. Devon was faster than Marcus remembered. Or maybe Marcus just hadn't been paying attention to how fast it happened. He watched his son drive the lane from the top of the key with the same first step Marcus had used for 12 seasons and felt something he didn't have a precise name for. When they were done, Devon sat on the baseline with his hands on his knees. Marcus stood at the free throw line with the ball. He hadn't stood here, just stood here. With a ball, and nowhere he needed to be, and no case. To build in longer than he could precisely name, he bounced it once. Twice. The way it came back to his hands unchanged. Indifferent to 8 months of concrete and fluorescent light, and the particular weight of a promise made to a teenager. He thought about Cole setting the shoes on a desk and asking if there was anything he should know about. He thought about Devon's hand next to his on a kitchen table. Not quite touching. He thought about Alicia Webb. 6 years old, and the Sunday she finally got to stop asking. He shot. The ball climbed, hung at the top of its arc, kissed the back of the rim, and fell through clean 5/. Neither of them said anything. He caught it on the way up from the floor and held it a moment. Then he bounced it across the hardwood to his son. Your turn, he said. Marcus Coleman didn't beat Cole by being stronger. He beat him by waiting longer. Could you have walked into that place on purpose and stayed quiet until justice had enough to speak? Tell me in the comments. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe. The next story is coming.